Este programa es de clasificación E, entretenimiento. A, apto para todo público.
Never miss another fabulous cultural event in Cotacachi just because you can't speak Spanish. In other words, tells you what you need to know about life in Cotacachi and Imbabura. And here is our host, Diego Vélez.
Welcome to In Other Words. We've got a great show today. We've got a great interview with Melissa Kirkendall from Austin, Texas, from Little Village, Big Mountain Films. So we're talking about a documentary she's making here in Cotacachi with regarding Carmen Kumba. And so let's get into one of her favorite songs by the Pixies.
Stop.
Find out about the local events in Cotacachi before they happen on What's Going On.
Yeah, what's going on? There's a couple of really nice events happening this weekend, Saturday actually, in Cotacachi. The first one is the celebration of the Santo Reyes, the Three Kings, continuation. This is the third weekend in a row they're going to be playing music and having food. And this time it's going to be in Barrio Rio Frio, if you know where that is. It's right there behind the Mercado, the terminal. You can hear the music start about 8 p.m. and it's free. It'll be outside in the barrio. So come celebrate the Three Kings, the Catholic, Christian ceremony of the Three Kings and the Wise Men. So it should be really cool. And then also on Saturday, this time at 2 p.m. Saturday, there's a really great event happening at La Calera in Finca Ellis, in Finca Los Andes, also known as, and that's starting at 2 p.m. and it costs $8, but there's going to be some food. There's going to be live music from Huayra Calapi and his Andean band. There's going to be a ceremony by some local indigenous Andean people, and there's also a medicine man, shaman, indigenous person from the jungle who's going to come do, I think he's Shuar, he's going to come doing a ceremony at Deborah Brock's finca. So make sure you check that out. And please bring a bag of rice or beans to donate to the elders of the community in La Calera. So that's Saturday, 2 p.m. See you there.
Alrighty, Macy here with some international / South American news. So on Thursday, that was yesterday, a car bomb exploded at the police academy in Bogota, Colombia. 21 people were killed, including a young cadet from Ecuador who was reportedly at the top of her class. But the other 9 students from Ecuador will finish out their studies there despite the tragedy. Sunday, a woman was gang raped by 3 men at a bar in Quito. She was attending a friend's party with 2 other women and those 3 men. The hashtag Todos Somos Marta, We're All Martha, has gained national attention, and there will be marches on Monday in Quito and Guayaquil standing up to sexual assault and machismo. And now, on to some lighter things. 34-year-old Inti Gudoneberg was granted the National Order of Merit by President Lenin Moreno. He's invented a turbine that could collect up to 80 tons of plastic daily from bodies of water. The invention landed him on MIT Technology Review Latin America's Innovators Under 35 list. Over in Santiago, the capital of Chile, 100 new electric buses are driving the streets. The government plans to replace diesel buses in the entire country by 2050. Other countries in the region are taking similar steps. Colombia will put up 1,500 electric taxis by 2020, and Uruguay has set up electric car charging stations along some major highways. So we'll see when Ecuador follows suit. And here is something we can all get behind. This Sunday night we'll have a super blood wolf moon. It's a dramatic name, but National Geographic does a good job explaining it if you look it up. So look up at the sky at 11:41 on Sunday night to see the giant red moon. The whole eclipse will last from 9:36 to 2:48. That's all I got for you today. So we're going to head right into part 1 of Diego's interview with Melissa, the filmmaker.
Listen to the special people who define Cotacachi here on Something to Talk About.
We're here with In Other Words, and we're talking to Melissa Kirkendall. And we're here in Finca Andes in La Calera. Talk about your film that you're coming out with, your documentary, and your production company, and being in Ecuador. So welcome. I just want to ask you some questions about movies. Like I was saying, my love is movies, because when I was a kid growing up, my dad we'd be watching a black and white movie, and he'd say, that's Humphrey Bogart, that's Fred McMurray, the director is this guy, all this stuff. So I know all these things. It's weird. And I like watching the credits because I just grew up that way, So I like to know who was this guy, who was that guy, who did the cinematography, a nerd that way. Because my dad trained me, It was like the only thing we really talked about. It's really an honor to talk to filmmakers. For me, that's one of the things. I was just talking to a friend of mine who has a drone. I thought, I think I need a drone. Even though my German friend, he just had his drone eaten by a wave on the coast.
Oh, no.
He was flying backwards. I guess you can fly backwards and film this. And then his sensor didn't pick up, or he didn't notice that there was a wave. And whoosh, just ate his $1,400 camera or drone. Wow. And I thought, wow, it's kind of funny in a way, but tragic at the same time. Because he had all these great shots, in the chip inside the drone. So let's get started here. So the first question was, these are the things I'm curious about. Why film as a medium to tell your stories in your art?
That's a really good question. I don't think anybody's asked me that before. I actually started out when I was younger. I wrote for high school newspaper, had a zine when I was in my 20s.
Okay.
I was a guest writer for some different zines and newspaper publications. Done quite a bit of blogging. Let's see. The long answer would be or maybe short answer is I really, really would like to be a writer, but I also see things so visually.
Right.
And to me, documentary filmmaking is just a different style of journalist storytelling. And I think sometimes, when you write something, what I love when you read something or write something is you, depending on how it's written, the person visualizes their interpretation of that.
Of course,
writing.
right.
But sometimes it's really profound to just show people. And I think with this type of subject, the story that I'm doing with Carmen and with some others, I think the visual can be really profound.
Right.
And let's face it, people are reading less and less. Younger people like to watch videos. So
right. Yeah, so it's also, I think it's also the necessity of the culture, right? So people are just like, in this country, I think people read half a book a year, which is, to me, is tragic because they don't promote literature in the schools, and so books are used as a punishment, like you got to read this book, so of course it's a real turnoff. Like poetry in the States where it's taught. I love poetry, but the way it's taught is, you got to memorize this poem or you got to interpret this poem. So people are like, so as soon as they're out of school, they're not going to read a poem. They don't want to get near a book. So if I offer you a book of poetry, you're like, no, please don't give me that. For me, film is like you said, it's a visual thing. And then would you be interested in narrating your films or somebody you have like somebody with a magical film voice?
There are different, so in every type of film, and I work in all different mediums within film, and there's different schools on that. I personally have yet to, I don't ever want to hear my voice or see me on camera.
Right.
I want the person who I'm documenting their story, or if it's somebody that's deceased, the experts of that story, their family, whatever.
Right.
I want the story to be told through the people who are living it or it's about, rather than my description.
Put yourself in front of the camera, right?
Right.
Because I think that's the hard part, that people want to make it about themselves.
Yeah, and I don't want it. There's,
right.
I mean...
Look at me, look how cool.
Yeah, like Michael Moore, who I like some of his pieces, his work, because I'm in alignment with some of his messages.
Sure.
But I'm not a fan of how he delivers stuff necessarily.
Right.
Because I think he sometimes does make it too much about him.
Sure.
Or puts the, changes the tone.
Yeah, I think he's fallen in love with his image, with the hat and the kind of roly-poly guy that's in your face. I think Roger and Me, was one of my favorites because it was just so sort of crass, it just showed corporate people were just like, they don't really care, so then I always knew that, but then it was like, that was the most obvious manifestation of wow, it's awful what happens to people. In that case, I agree that, I wouldn't want to be in the front. So let me ask you this question, and that was great. So that's your art then. So you sort of transitioned from writing, and this is like a visual way to find stories and tell them, because it's the medium, that's very visual.
Well, I see things ever since I can remember. I'm constantly, all the time, looking around and will either see something that I think is a great setting for filming or still photography, or a situation unfolding. I'll be like, I'd make a great scene in a movie. Or I meet people. This is my favorite, is I meet people and I sort of catalog them as I gotta...
That's a great story.
Character,
right.
Or that person has a great story. Carmen would be,
Sure.
As soon as I met her, I was like, she's got a great story to tell.
And I can tell you, I've met other parteras, and they're really fascinating too. There's one woman that, we'll see if we can get you to meet her. I think her name is Mama Josefina. She's about 80. And she's not practicing anymore because, she's 80. But nobody in her community wants to learn. She wants to pass on the knowledge. Can you imagine? I want to teach you what I know. Everybody's like, no, we're cool. No, thanks. And so it's really tragic in a way. And I know when I talk to Martha, one of the parteras, she's interested, as in others are, in starting a school of parteria, for just to teach this craft of midwifery.
What you just said is exactly part of why I wanted to do
it's
this.
amazing, and I want to meet her because I thought she has so much knowledge that even though I don't speak Kichwa, but I speak it of Spanish, and that I can have someone who could translate and put her on the radio and get that message, get it down, documented, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe not on film, but on radio. Yeah, there's so many stories. So the question I had was, what led you to find this place, Ecuador, to tell this story at this time, about Carmen and I know you're going to probably do a story about Mickey, who's my neighbor.
Yeah, well, I'm going to interview her. I don't know where everything that I'm going to do while I'm here.
Right, it's unfolding kind of, right?
Yeah, it's unfolding.
Right.
And for this particular piece on Carmen, it's going to be a documentary short. So 20 to 30 minutes. Because I just, everybody keeps asking me why, and that really has to do with financial reasons.
Of course.
I've already been talking to some entities back in the U.S. that are interested in seeing how I do with this, and it could turn into a series, it could turn into a feature.
Good.
But it's just really, to do it at the higher level that I want to do it, it's really expensive.
Of course.
I'm starting with...
it comes down to finding the
it comes
capital.
down to money.
Right.
And especially because this isn't like a, let's hop on the plane and go to Ecuador and film for the weekend kind of thing.
Yes, right.
It takes 9 hours, to typically, because there's a layover usually in Miami or Mexico City or or somewhere, and then you got to get in the car and travel all the way to here. So it's an ordeal just to get here. But how I came across it is actually, where we're sitting in Finca Ellis 2 years ago through a mutual friend. I found out about Deborah moving here kind of on a whim to help her dad out with this place. Deborah and I had a mutual friend that was scared to come here and visit, and it was on Facebook, believe it or not.
Scared of Ecuador in general.
Just to leave the country. She's never left the country. She still hasn't.
Because still there.
She said she posted wanted to go, but she was afraid, and so I replied to her post, and I said, I'll go with you, but I want to film it, and I'm totally serious. And she was like, I know you are, and she introduced me to Deborah. Well, guess what? I came, my friend didn't.
She didn't, right?
Yeah,
still.
2 months 2 months later, I was here. I spent a month talking to Deborah and different people in the area.
Nice.
And in the process, everybody kept talking about Carmen. And she's referred to as the famous midwife of Cotacachi. Even I've seen videos and newspaper articles and whatnot. So I finally got to meet Carmen on my last day in the area. And I was instantly like, wow.
Yeah, she's cool.
She's got a great story. I think it's interesting that the Red Cross has worked directly with her. I think that to Westerners speaks volumes.
Sure, yeah. It legitimizes it,
Yeah.
Because what Martha told me, that I think if you get to meet her, she's really cool. There's a lot of competition between hospitals, traditional practices of giving birth, obviously, and midwifery. So they're kind of like crosshairs, like they'll be like, no, don't, the hospitals will tell women, no, don't go see the midwife.
Yeah.
And the midwives don't get all that cooperation. Sometimes there's a nexus where the obstetrician or the midwife will work together in the hospital. It's happened with a few cases that I was told about. Generally, they're at odds and they kind of don't trust each other, but they can work together, and it has happened. And also what I found out, which is really interesting, anytime there's an organization, this as a human, there's competition. So even though there's like 80 midwives in this area and there's an association, within them, there's like, well, we don't talk to this midwife, we don't talk to this midwife. It's like high school, like we don't talk to those girls, and we don't talk to these guys. There's the midwives that have been taken under the umbrella of the hospital, who have been legitimatized and they're cool, like they got the blessing, and then the ones that are not. And so then there's that whole envidia, sort of hostility and jealousy, even among that, so in everything there's some kind of drama, like there's a lady, Anita, who's a midwife that I've met in San Pedro up here in the hill foot of Cotacachi, and she's like that. She's not in the cool group, even though she's super knowledgeable and super cool, little tiny lady. And it's interesting because they're competing for limited resources, right? And so it's interesting because even among them, because they don't make a whole lot of money, but they'll do a few people a year, and so it's interesting how it's difficult for them too, because they're trying to find a niche. The women in their own communities are choosing the hospital.
Well, that is one of the things that I want to talk about that's actually a little bit unique in this area, is that there's more cooperation and collaboration between the Western or modern medicine and natural medicine, and the shaman and midwives.
So more so than the United States, you think?
Yes, and even within, from what I'm told, even within Ecuador, this area in particular, there's some specific programs. Yana Puma is one that
I've heard of that.
I'm trying to set up some meetings and interviews with them.
Okay.
And there's a local hospital in here. They work directly sometimes with the shaman and the midwives.
Okay.
Yana Puma has an education program where people from around the world will come to learn natural medicine and also teach and share. Part of it too is 2 years ago I became very interested in Carmen's story, but then I got cancer last year. And I'm cancer free now.
Oh, good,
but
good.
I immediately, my first reaction was, oh my God, I want to go to South America.
I gotta get
go do ayahuasca and go see some shaman and do
sure.
natural treatment. I don't want chemotherapy and radiation.
Right,
and I ended up avoiding that. I had to get a big surgery. And what I did do is contacted through another project. I happen to know the caretaker of the Native American Church in North America.
Right. Peyote ceremony.
Yeah, for peyote. And I called him and I said, hey, what do you know about peyote and cancer? And he said that his father swears he was cured by peyote meetings and medicine. Then the Cheyenne Nation in Oklahoma invited me to a peyote meeting for my cancer. And I sat up all night and ate a ridiculous amount of peyote and felt horrible. While they sat there and prayed for me and did their Native American tradition ritual.
Right.
And I tell people, I'm like, I swear my cancer didn't spread because I did things like that. I immediately changed my diet. I started eating a bunch of mushrooms, and there was all kinds of stuff that you depending on what you have, you can research and find out. So that got me even more interested in wanting to tell, because I think it's important. I think it's important not only to not lose people's culture and tradition, like you're talking about with the young people. I know with the artists in the area, some of them talk about how, the young people, they don't want to make rugs anymore. They don't want to make alpaca blankets. They want to go work in technology. And so as a North American, and living in the country, like you say, our New Year's Eve is pretty mundane, really, when you think about it.
But drinking.
Yeah, by drinking. Well, and that's how we celebrate most holidays, right? Our
drinking.
Independence Day, you know, everybody...
Fireworks and drinking, hot dogs, barbecue.
Swimming, you know, going to the lake. And, you know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but we don't have, to me, one of the things I want to talk to the shaman about is that not only is it the natural medicine, but I really do think that the ceremony and rituals that go with it, those treat the heart and the mind. Of course. That's important too.
Right.
Because in the U.S., the only they'll say is keep a positive attitude. Well, they're saying kind of the same thing.
Sure.
Like, but there's no ritual to go with it to maybe help you get there.
Right. When I did my show on the Año Viejo, I realized and I learned something which I think is worthy of a film too, is that there's a social fabric that connects everybody, and the manifestations of burning the effigies, it's just a part of it, but really it's about connecting people. So let's say if you were my enemy last year, or you had made me mad, then I would burn a doll and I would just let it go. And
cleans the slate.
And next year, you know, maybe we'll have a better year together. So there's a possibility of a renacimiento, having a new year and having a new possibilities, you know. And I thought, wow, it's so much deeper than that. So I'm really glad you're here making a film about this little small piece, you know, which is kind of wild. So let me ask you this question. As a child, what were your interests, or as a teenager, as an adult? Because you told me something about doing zines and writing, but I think it's interesting because now that you're 50 and you had this cancer experience and you went to the Cheyenne, but as a child or as a teen or as an adult, what were some of your interests? And now you're into film, you know, so I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of had a pretty strong creative vein through me when I was younger, but also entrepreneur too.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I would get really a little kid. I would get in trouble because I would like want some other kids' toys, and so I'd make a deal and trade them for something.
Wow, you're doing eBay with the kids.
And I'd usually come out better.
Right. That's good.
So my parents would have to go return whatever it was. You know?
I'll trade you this phone for that mango. Oh wow. Hey.
Somehow I would talk the other kid into it, you know, and
that's funny.
And that kind of progressed. But I also had, like, with my parents, like, they were really strong on making us volunteer and stuff. And earn things. Okay. And so I think those kind of helped shape me. But I always was interested in art and curious. I've always been curious. Oh, good. Kind of like you were talking about wanting to interview people.
What's that?
Yeah, with me, I'm really curious about how things work. Whether it's people or things. I mean, I can even not be interested in something. Well, okay, to give you an idea, I don't remember what it was. I think I was sick or something. I was at home and I was watching TV and had PBS on, and a documentary on the origin of the potato came on. Oh wow! And I was completely enthralled, you know. And I'm like, and I never cared about a potato before.
Just ate them. Right.
I really am curious about how things work and why, and human nature for sure. Like, and kind of speaking back to what we were talking about, like, you know, difference in cultures, and right now in the United States culture, things are pretty crazy, and that to me, it motivates me to want to tell positive stories.
Sure.
You know, because I think that the world right now in general needs stories of empowerment that are uplifting and positive, and of sharing and coming together, because there's so much divisiveness going on. Not just the United States, but around the world. It's all over. Right. And the selfishness that's being taught and accepted by young people probably everywhere. Again, I feel like that's what, even though there's competition amongst midwives and whatnot,
which is natural.
That's natural because they have to survive.
Right.
But they all still want to share.
Sure.
You know? They just want to be able to pay their bills like anybody else.
And I think, you know, one of the books that I just read I could recommend to you is the Book of Joy, because I mean everybody wants to be joyful, right? So in the book by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, which is just a wonderful book, the Dalai Lama says that one of the reasons children are the way they are today is because they go to school, and in school they're taught to not be compassionate. And I thought it's interesting, you know, because as a teacher, that's really what I taught them, like, let's care about each other, let's listen to each other, quit interrupting, don't be a jerk, don't say negative things to each other, at least in here, because I can't control what goes on outside. And I thought it's interesting because that's what I tried to teach, even though I was an English teacher, supposedly, you know. Right. But I thought that's what I taught. We sat in a circle and we talked and we wrote and we cried and we laughed and we just made art, and it was really beautiful. And I thought, but it was such a outside the box thing that it's like what he says in the Book of Joy is just be grateful, you know, for what you have. Look at things from multiple perspectives. You know, as a filmmaker, you're looking at things like through your eyes, but it's so important to see it from other people. How do other people see it? How do the indigenous see their role? And why do they want the stuff we have, and why do they not want what we have? And then the last thing he said in the book that I can tell you is just have a sense of humor. Because, you know, when you're sick or you're dying or whatever's going on, find a way to laugh about it, you know, because it really is medicine. And the way your films are like medicine, that's how I see it, you know. So that's the book I would recommend, man. It's just powerful.
Yeah, no, I'll totally check that out.
So as a child, you did that stuff. That's cool.
And we are back with Diego Velez on In Other Words.
And here's the thing that I really want to know about, because I love films, and I'm going to say, I probably think that you like films too, since you're making them. What are the films that resonate with you? And even to this day, films like, because I asked somebody this question about some other topic, and there's so many damn books. I was interviewing a poet, a local poet who won a national award, and it's like, how do you tell people this is my favorite poem, or this is my favorite book, or these are some of my favorite poets? But then I don't mind telling people what some of my favorite movies are, because there's so many, but there's some that are just like, I can watch them over and over. So that's what I'm interested in. What are some of the films, or even films that, obviously you're making documentaries, but films that you would like to make, and films that just like, wow, what a film,
Well, I do more than documentaries.
Sure.
So certainly to pay the bills, because documentaries generally don't pay very well.
Right.
And I actually just started doing fictional script writing. Just started teaching myself that.
Okay.
Script. But I'm one of those weirdos that I don't have a lot of favorites of any one thing, but I have several that I really like that really stick with me. And for movies, I would say, well, documentaries, we can start with there. There's a really good one called Marwin Call.
Oh, I don't know that one.
That is a really, really, really profound documentary that now there's a Disney movie based on this guy called Marwinville or Welcome to Marwin or something like that.
Okay.
It just came out with Steve Carell plays this guy.
Oh, I've heard of that. Okay.
And I think they've made it into a comedy.
Okay.
I think The Fog of War.
Oh, yes, I remember
was
that.
A really great movie.
Chilling.
That was really chilling. I saw that when it was in the theaters, and it was Mac was speaking to the present situation when he was really talking about the past. That was really interesting to me, and it was
about
really
the way their minds work, right? It was interesting how he justified it all. It was really scary.
Well, my favorite quote in that movie, because it's true, even though it's sadly true, is that when he says, "If you lose the war, you become a war criminal. If you win the war, you're a hero."
Interesting, right?
And it's true. It's sadly true.
Sure. Who writes the history is the victors, right?
Right, exactly. Right. It's because when you win, you get to write the history. Exactly.
Sure. It never says, that never happened.
And then, Hands on a Hard Body.
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh man, that one's really hard to find, but I believe it's a Linkletter film.
Oh, okay.
And it was made in the 80s, and it's about a contest. It's a pop culture documentary about this car contest that's held every year outside of Houston, I think in Midland. Anyways, this car dealership, they have a contest, and you sign up, and if you get picked, only so many people can get picked. They put a car out underneath the tent, and you have to stand there and keep one hand on the car at all times.
Then you win. Whoever's last man standing.
It lasts about 2 days.
Wow.
And like every 2 hours, they give them like a 5-minute break to go use the bathroom or whatever.
Right.
I mean, it's just they're quite it's characters hilarious. That are doing it.
Sure.
And then like this one woman, after 24 hours, is just delirious. She takes her hand off and starts walking down the road, and they have to chase her down to make sure she doesn't get hit by a car.
Right. Just to get a car. Right.
Yeah, just to get a car.
What a great promo, though. Wow.
Yeah, great promo. Right. And it's really simply done.
Right.
And it's very raw, and that's what I like about it. And like I kind of, those are all very different types of documentaries, but all really well done. For movies, one of my favorites is Station Agent.
I don't know that one.
Ever seen that? It's about a little person who, it's fictional, has a friend who passes away, and he inherits a train station in upstate New York.
Oh, okay.
He goes to take it over. And what I love about that movie is it's so well written and filmed. Nothing really that exciting happens. There's no violence. There's no sex. There's no.
It's a small story.
It's just a slice of life, and it's told from very of a little person who inherits a train station.
Right. Because don't you think, Melissa, that's really, I mean, as a writer, and you're a writer, that really, I think that movies or really anything's based on the word. If it's a good story and somebody wrote it and or it comes from a great source, like, a great writer, So if it's a good story and the people don't screw it up, it's going to be a pretty good film.
It's going to be good,
yeah. Because it's the words, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the words.
Yeah.
Whereas you can get a great story and somebody changes it, like you said, somebody changed that movie into a comedy. Well, maybe it wasn't a comedy.
Yeah, if you watch it, it's a really good documentary that's definitely pulls at your heartstrings.
Right.
And has some funny moments in it.
Right, because Beloved, right? You're familiar with Beloved, Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
Well, when Jonathan Demme made that movie, who I think is a great director, he made it into a ghost story. But if you read the book, and it's really not a ghost story, but it's easily, and I'm not going to say because he's white, I'm just saying he saw it as a ghost story, or maybe that's the way he could sell it or make it popular. And it's a great film, but when you read the book, it's like, no, it's not a ghost story.
It's not anything like that.
No, and so it just kind of makes you mad because people that hadn't read the book would think like, oh, wow, it's a ghost story. which are cool. Ghost stories are cool. But then that book has nothing to do with ghosts. It has to do with slavery. It has to do with that, just chilling when you read Toni Morrison. And then it'd be hard to make a movie of her stuff. And so you said you do other things besides documentaries. What other kind of things do you do?
I have my first feature film that I produced.
Nice.
It's going to be in Slam Dance.
Okay.
In just a couple weeks. So when I leave here, I go home for one day.
Slam Dance is a festival then?
It's a festival that happens at the same time as Sundance.
Okay.
So they literally are across the street from each other. And when I say across the street, I mean, it's like you walk out the door of one event, well, actually of the main theater for Sundance, and walk across the street to the theaters for Slam Dance.
Okay. And the difference would be what between Slam and Sun?
Obviously Slam Dance isn't as prestigious.
Right, it's new.
But Slam Dance is kind of like the little brother to Sundance.
Okay.
And a lot of filmmakers will get into Slam Dance first before they get into Sundance.
Okay.
Sundance is definitely, all film festivals are political. I don't care what anybody tells you. I mean, maybe the super small ones in areas that aren't known yet. The big ones that you hear about, Tribeca, Cannes, Sundance, they're all political on some level. So it's exciting for us to have a movie and
you produced it, you said.
I can't talk a lot about it.
No,
but
that's
we're
fine.
getting
That's
some
fine.
attention from some very important people in the film
good.
world.
So it's a film.
It's a film. It's
nice.
It's a fictional, scripted, set in the 1950s.
Okay.
And it's kind of Twilight Zone-ish.
Okay.
Even the way the characters speak. Our director, I didn't direct it, I'm a producer. The director did a really good job working with the two main talent
nice.
And making sure that they acted and spoke like you would in the 50s. And it's got a sci-fi element to it. It's set in Mexico in the 50s, and it's a mystery thriller.
Okay. So tell me, as a producer, what do producers do?
There's different types of producers.
Right.
People ask me that all the time.
Right.
And the job that I get hired for the most currently is to line produce, which is kind of an accountant manager hybrid. So we manage the budget, and we negotiate deals and also oversee everything and make sure everything's legal so that it can actually get distributed. Because once you make a movie, you have to get it insured in order to sell it. So so it can be seen in public. Okay. So it's a long process.
Insured, what does that mean? Insured, like the movie insured?
You have to get movie insurance to
indemnify it against getting sued or something?
Yeah, it's called errors and omissions. And so what that means, if this was going to be on camera and we were drinking Coca-Cola.
Did you get permission from Coke?
Yeah, or you don't necessarily have to get permission if it's not being featured. Now, if we start holding up the Coke and
holding up your iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's a little bit different. But if it's just naturally in there, we buy insurance so that if Coca-Cola were to come back and say, "Hey, they didn't get permission,"
right.
The insurance company
they didn't pay us.
They don't need permission. They were it was a beverage sitting on the
just
table.
sitting there like Webster's dictionary just here, but it's not
Right. It's not. That's
interesting.
A focus in the.
So it's all the stuff nobody really notices, but it's necessary to do.
Exactly. And then there are other types of producers that get money. Those usually, when you see in the credits, the executive producers are the ones that help to bring money.
Okay.
And the producers are producers, line producers, co-producers, associate producers, all those vary dramatically in meaning. Line producers usually is somebody who is a producer and is managing at the same time.
So you're learning how to do these things, or you learned how to do these things?
Yeah, I have been. I just started being a straight producer the last few years. Okay. And so I've produced a few shorts and now this feature, and then I'm a producer on my own stuff.
So it's a whole different part of it, right? Not just the filming, but the behind the scenes, the nuts and bolts stuff.
The nuts and bolts and the upper management, as well as I've been working on being more of a creative producer, because for a few years I got into more of the upper management producing, which is very important, and I'm very good at it, but it's not as much fun. So now, and on this movie, being more of a creative producer it's just more fun, because I get to help problem solve and help figure out how we can keep the story moving along.
It's vital to the project. You're more in the nexus of having to do with art, right?
Exactly.
That's cool.
Which is more interesting to me, because like I said, I fell away from it for a couple of years and kind of woke up one day.
Because the other stuff, I guess you get paid to do it, but then you're like, oh man, what a drag. It's not that interesting.
It's like a job.
Yeah, it's sometimes. A job, right? Yeah. Because as a reader, I always think, I was telling you about the Book of Joy. I just read this book somebody gave me. A British friend bought it in the airport and said it was the most boring book she'd ever read. It was making her fall asleep. She gave it to me, and I thought it was funny. It's called Art as Therapy, right? Man, it was a cool book. So it's an art therapist who wrote a book about paintings and how paintings are a way way to sort of analyze and solve the problems of your life, like the paintings in the history of, of the canon of art. And it was so cool, because all the way from Rembrandt to all the different masters. And I thought it was an amazing book, just the way it was written and the way, it personalized it. Like, so if you're having a relationship or you're having a problem with this or that, and how painting is a way, these paintings, specific paintings were a way. So I think like, wow. And this, for somebody, it was like, she said it was the most boring book she ever read. It's amazing. I couldn't stop reading it. What's the last film that just made you go, wow?
I've seen some good films recently. I mean, the two hardest parts of filmmaking are raising the money to make the film and then figuring out how to get the film seen.
Distributed, right,
yeah.
right.
So
that is what's difficult.
So the actual making of the film is
right.
I don't want to diminish, because it's really hard work too, but that's like
that's
the
beginning
most
of it.
fun,
Right,
and that's the easiest part. It's the beginning and the end.
It's like writing a book, if it just sits in a shelf or it gets remaindered, it gets shredded. So for me, my friend Paul Espinosa, who's made a lot of films with PBS, he taught me how hard it is to get the money, because really that's what it's about. Then he started his own production company because, he's won Emmys and has made a lot of good documentaries about all kinds of different, because he's Mexican-American, most about that experience around those things. But really what I learned from him is that how difficult it is to get things funded, even though he was with PBS and, and even though, when he started his own production company, it's getting the money, like you said, 20 minutes. Doesn't seem like long, but then I realized it's really expensive to be like a Ken Burns or to be, to make these kind of films. It costs a lot of money.
Oh yeah,
all these
Ken
people.
Burns, his documentaries are in the millions. I haven't even raised my full budget to do this. I know Deborah asked me how long she asked me how long it was going to be, and I said, probably 20 or 30 minutes. And she said, when do you think it'll be done? I said, probably a year from now. She was like, what?
Right, to film 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, for 20 minutes. And I'm like,
right.
We're only filming 7 days. That's not very much time to make. But, that's part of the magic of movies is that when we do a good job and it's finished, the audience doesn't know.
Right. Doesn't see the seams and all the difficult work behind the scenes. I guess that's another film, documentary about all this stuff that goes on behind
the scenes.
Which is like
in the business,
blood,
we talk about that all the time. Like
the blood.
Of course, I always want to make it a comedy.
Well, yeah, it is.
So much ridiculous stuff happens.
Well, then, what the Dalai Lama says is you got to laugh.
I'm trying to think of something really profound that I've seen recently.
I just saw this short. It was a documentary. There's a guy playing guitar, wandering. There's all these great shots all over the world, and kind of what I liked about it, he's talking and he's Czechoslovakian. He has an accent, like a European accent, but it was just really cool because he's talking about like finding yourself, and then he's wandering all around. He's playing guitar and he's walking all these different places. Only like 20 minutes, but I could tell that it took a long time to get all these shots and splice them together. And then he's doing the voiceover, and I just thought it was cool. I took the time to watch all 20 minutes of it, and I thought it was worth it. So if you think of something later, you can tell me some movie that just made you go, Oh, in this country, I was talking about this before. It seems like you could make a film about everything you see. Like every time I'm like you, I see stuff like, I got to make a film about that. I got to put them on the radio. I'm going to go home and write a poem. I'm going to go do a painting. So everything is a manifestation of, for me, about art, how to make it into some art. And so how do you even choose, like, I think you spoke about that, about Carmen and Mickey, but how do you find like the topics, because they just come to you, like they just hit you in the face and you think like, oh, I got to make a movie about that.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question because I think that it's hard to. I think it's just whatever grabs you, and starts to pique my interest. I get, and I'm sure you get this too. I have a lot of very helpful people in my orbit that are telling me what I need to.
Oh, sure, about. Right. And I like how you said that, helpful, right?
Yeah. And that's fine, everybody has their opinion, but it has to be, something will happen and click, and then you go, okay,
I should make a movie about this.
I need to make a movie about this. I want to make I have so many ideas and things that I want to pursue, but I only have, so much time and funds. And,
sure.
Even the story of this finca, I've now decided I'm going to script that and make it based on true events. Deborah and I have talked about it. She's cool with it. Because I realized that was going to take a lot of money and a lot of years. But Carmen was always just kind of there, hanging around.
It's very interesting stuff.
Very interesting stuff. And then I happened to, after that, do work with the Native American church in their peyote garden and learn about that. And it just kept coming around. I think
so that's a story too, isn't it? The peyote garden thing.
Well, here's what's interesting. So I was actually consulting as a producer with somebody who wanted to make a documentary that once we got involved, I disagreed with what he wants to do. And, I don't think he means to, but he's walking a very fine line of exploiting.
Sure, because you profane those things.
Helping them.
Right.
And he won't listen to anybody. And the Native Americans, that he's involved with, that, to give you an idea, when we first met them, they invited me into the TP to participate in a peyote meeting, and they wouldn't let him in.
Wow.
And I turned it down because I had a business meeting the next day with ESPN for another documentary. I was like, I've never done this before.
So they got a bad sense from him, and they're like...
Yeah, and they still talk to me about it, and I don't think he's a bad guy. Anyways, the focus that I thought that would make a really compelling story that could possibly help them, somebody is doing. It was a good idea.
Okay, good. Because that happens,
Yeah.
As long as it gets made, like, when I was in the States, I got involved with the Sundance, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Sundance, the beautiful ceremony that the Cheyenne do, the Lakota do.
Oh, yeah.
It's all over the place. So I actually got involved through the Sweat Lodge, and from there, it morphed into singing, drumming, and being a singer at these ceremonies. And what we found was that Arvo Looking Horse, which is the chief of the Lakota, carries the pipe, the white pipe. Anyway, he said is that certain things you can't allow white people to take them over. Like, I can invite you to come and participate, but I can't let you do it because it's just for them. It's kind of like some of their ceremonies, like peyote ceremony, which is not Lakota, but some of them, like the Humblecha, which is the Vision Quest, the Sundance, and the Sweat Lodge, are still really pure because they haven't shared them with everybody in the world, and they haven't become like commercialized. And so it's really powerful that if somebody comes in to do a thing on the peyote ceremony, because you can profane it really easily. Just like the things you see around here that I've seen, they're just really beautiful, But then at the same time, you can make it into a zoo, into just a horrible sort of a thing. So I'm really glad that people are careful with these things because they're really ancient. And like your friend who was trying to do that thing, and there's bad medicine when you do stuff like that because you're taking things and misinterpreting them.
Yeah, I have talked to Chief Black Bear quite a bit, the Cheyenne Nation.
Okay.
And I want to. It's just sort of swimming in the back of my head, and I don't know yet what I can do to help. But I have told them that I want to figure out something I can do to help.
Okay, and that means a lot.
Yeah, because I've been there and visited. I don't even think they realize. When you drive into a community like that, it's poor, and you see billboards of just liquor and cigarettes and beer, and gas is more expensive. And just as a person from the outside, immediately I'm like, oh my God, this is part of how they're being suppressed.
Sure.
And kept down, and so I've been having some conversations with them about that.
Good.
I don't know how. I know, and kind of to me, I know I'm not the only one. And same with like covering the shaman and midwives in Ecuador and other cultures around the world. I'm not the only one. I've got another piece that I'm doing on the high cost of healthcare in the United States after my bout with cancer, because I found myself underinsured. I almost went to Colombia country to get a really major surgery because I wasn't sure how I was going to pay for it.
Sure. I
found a loophole and got some union insurance reactivated, and I was okay. But it opened up my eyes wider than they'd ever been before at how horrible our system is in America.
Oh, yeah.
And it's designed that way. And it's designed to
been
be
commercialized. Right.
It's been commercialized. Right. A doctor actually said a profound thing to me that he said, healthcare in the United States has gone from compassionate care to profitable care.
Yeah, it's monetized, isn't it?
It's totally monetized.
Yeah. I could tell you, just to interrupt you, I was thinking, because I'm weird like you are in that way, that things come to me. I would think the story of the Native American church would be told best by you about your story. Even if it's a really personal story, almost dying or having cancer, because that would be a great story to tell the story, your own personal story. Ultimately, through prayer or whatever it was, and I'm not sure exactly what it was, whether it was peyote, you're alive. You're here to make these movies. And so when I paint, when I write, I'm telling my story. Yeah. So, or for me, art is medicine that heals me. It keeps me from going nuts.
Yeah, I agree, and I think for me, what you're also talking about is you're spreading that energy, good energy,
right,
and education and memory, and something to when people look at that, they know that it's
they feel it.
Yeah, they feel it.
Right.
For me, with the films, the way I describe these types of documentaries. My first documentary was a pop culture documentary on 60s garage rock, so it was more of a nostalgic piece, positive piece. But these, like Carmen and the cancer doc, those two, I consider, I'm just keeping the conversation going. Like, we clearly need to keep talking about these things.
Right.
I think the cultures, like in Ecuador and other places where they're struggling with losing the knowledge.
Traditions, right.
The traditions and the knowledge.
Right.
Some maybe just by offering a way for the conversation to continue, continue, that'll help them keep it going. You know, and with the cancer doc, there are so many out there of people like about alternative treatments and the financial, burden. And there's a whole term now, a medical term called financial toxicity that came from people that get terminal cancer that becomes really cost prohibitive, and the stress of being able to afford their treatment kills them before the cancer does. It's like there's a problem here, people. Like that.
What a modern dilemma.
Come up with a term,
to describe
this.
Killing people from stress.
Yeah,
right.
I have an opportunity to try to keep those conversations going. So why not? It
maybe
could be me or somebody else,
change the perception or somebody's,
or inspire somebody else.
Because you talked about the fog of war, and I think if I remember clearly, at the end of it, you almost see that he has a revelation. He kind of gets it. He's telling this story about what he did and what happened, and it's almost like, I don't know if he feels bad or he actually takes responsibility, for what his role was. And I think that's what I'd like to see. And the best parts of Michael Moore is when people that he's exposing as being, fraudulent actually admit what they're doing, And I think because I always knew it, but it's different when a racist or somebody who's defrauding people out of millions, like the whole banking thing, when they actually say, yeah, that's what we were doing, and they admit it, even though they're not going to go to jail or nothing's going to happen. To me, it's almost like redemption, I always knew that was going on, So your thing about this term, wow, what a term to come up with,
Yeah.
Every Friday afternoon at 4 p.m., English Language Radio in Cotacachi.
Great interview, Macy, with the great editing skills. And that's part one of our interview. Next week, we'll have part two of Melissa Kirkendall. And remember, Saturday, you can come meet her at Finca Ellis, 2 p.m. in La Calera. Thanks for being with In Other Words, and thanks for another great show.
We're going to finish up with one other song recommended by Melissa. This is I Ain't the Same by Alabama Shakes. And she says that it helped her with the first heartbreak and then again when she was battling cancer.
Thank you for listening to our program. In other words, we will see you again next Friday at the same time, 4 p.m. on Radio Publica Cotacachi, 93.5 FM.
Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore.